one of the interesting things that has come out of that was a stirring that specifically has happened with Bill Such. And Bill has just been wonderfully gripped with a message that really, in some ways, I think kind of got kindled at Chico Alive, and for specific reasons that he knows and may or may not share tonight. But I've invited Bill to come and talk to us for 10 or 15 minutes tonight, and then we're going to specifically go into prayer around this area. We're going to specifically pray into what he says, that we will hear, be, and do what God would want us to do with the message. So Bill, would you come on up and share with us? Yeah.
Well, I appreciate Gaylord asking me to do this, and I appreciate the openness that you're allowing me. There's things that I say that you may not agree with, you may not like. This is where I'm at this point, and Gaylord asked me to share it with you. So,
right.
So from that standpoint, my text is actually Matthew 28:18-20, where Jesus said, "All authority has been given unto me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always to the very end of the age." My notion came to last 4 months, if I can summarize this in 15 minutes, maybe do it for 4 hours, is the idea that Christians, generally speaking, in our community are working for the betterment of our community. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that it comes from the Enlightenment in Europe in the 1750s, in which basically religion was put aside, and we discerned it ourselves in terms of secular operation by rationality. And rationality is broken down now. In other words, we'll hear words like pluralism or multiculturalism, or I use the word fragmentation. There's fragmentation everywhere. And I think that we, churches, have been, in some sense, the frog in the kettle that have been bored with it in many respects. I'm talking generally now. So there's obviously specific examples in Chico that are different from this, but I think that this is true. By that I mean that the community, basically, what does our community want? Our secular community. They want us to be good citizens. Good Christian citizens. Good Christian citizens. So in other words, then what we do is we work for the betterment of our community. We go and clean up the school and so on, or we go and I'm part of a group that I'm leading, a missional community group with Grace Community Church, and the group wanted to help people at Catalyst and provide bags for them and so forth. And so I asked the question, what's the difference between a Christian group doing that and a secular group, or a skeptic society, or the humanist society in Chico? What is it that makes it particularly different? One of the things this group's serving a tourist shelter, and I asked the same question. And what they said to me was, well, we're having a music group there, and they'll be singing Christian songs. Well, I hope they're not just singing Christian songs. I hope that they're giving testimonies between the songs to say what Jesus says. Because in my view, the betterment of society, we've been hoodwinked. Hoodwinked in the sense that if we do good to people in society, then we're doing the will of God. I don't think that's sufficient. I think that it's two-sided. In other words, that's social justice. I was involved in that in 10 years at the Jesus Center. I always had that problem. Feeding people, that's not enough. In other words, feeding people, yes, but bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the key. So the two sides of the coin, if you understand me, don't misunderstand them. I'm not saying that we're not to do good things within the community. We are. But I think that for the most part, I can speak this generally, for Christians in our community, what we're doing is we're doing that, but we're not making disciples. We think that's enough. Somehow, those of us who are Protestants, and no offense if you're Roman Catholic, we've sort of gone with that St. Francis thing, which is preach the gospel, do whatever you want, etc., and if necessary, use words. No. You use words because making disciples is telling people about Jesus Christ. And you use whatever means you can to do that. I'm prepared to be aligned then with the fundamentalists, the crazies who are on the street corners, because that's what it comes down to in the end, is telling people about Jesus Christ. Now, we've got to be sensitive. We've got to use our talents, our education, our social standing, our economic status to get into people's lives. But at some point, we have to say who this person Jesus Christ is. That is surely, that's where I stand. If you want to disagree with me afterwards, get me in a corner and let's talk. Because it's not sufficient to do good works, because that's what our community wants. That's what the city wants. That's what this city wants you to do, is to be a good citizen. I'm saying to you, don't be a good citizen. What you have to be is, I'll use this word, a disciple in the making. That's a disciple of Jesus Christ. That does all good things that your church are doing, but the element that's missing, I think, is the notion of actually telling people about who Jesus Christ is. I use the word telling about people who Jesus Christ is, but it's really making disciples. And that's the text that I use. And it's happening because I think this is kind of crazy, because it's sort of like this is a one-time thing I can do. From 1 to 300, what happened was the church, this is according to the book called The Forgotten Way by Alan Hirsch. He reckons, from estimates, that there were about 20,000 or 30,000 Christians at the end of the first century. By the beginning of the fourth, there were 20 million Christians. We know that because Constantine took it over and it became the official religion, etc. Now, what happened in that 300-year period? There were no worship groups, there were no seminaries, there were no people like me with theological education and so forth. They did it. How did they do it? Well, they did it through cells. They did it through telling people. They did it because each one of them was a disciple on the making. And then what happened, and I'm giving this is my simplistic version of church history, from 300 onwards, when we became powerful because we became the center of the empire, right the way through to now, we, in many respects, thought that the expansion of the kingdom came through political power. In other words, we were the center in Europe until, the Renaissance and so on, and right through the Reformation to the Enlightenment, and then we started to fade. And we have still notions of, let's take back America, what? To the founding fathers, to the notion of what it means for us to be Christians. That's a political entity from that standpoint. And I'm saying this here, and I can back up figures on it, is that we're losing ground now, because we're on the outside. We know that. We're not in the same position that we were in a generation, 2 generations ago. From the standpoint of, in Europe, it's much worse. In other words, Alan Hirsch estimates that maybe 35 or 40% of people in Chico can be reached by us in our churches where we are. All right. And that doesn't mean that 30 or 40% are actually worshiping. It's probably much less than that. I don't know what it would be. Well, how many Christians in Chico? 5,000? 10,000? Well, who's going to reach the other 60%? Because it's not working on the basis of what we're doing in many respects. Because we're not reaching them. We're reaching people within our own midst. And so the idea is, okay, so we've reached this point now where we're losing ground. Pew Research, Barna Research are all saying that in another 25 years we're going to be less people going to church as they are now. So in other words, we're losing ground from that standpoint. What's happened is, well, what's happened is that we've lost the essence of what it means to be a disciple in many respects. And I'll tell you where I can prove this, not here, but I can prove it by looking at China. Because in China in the 1970s, Christianity was banned and obliterated by Chairman Mao. That was it. But from when he died, after he died, what's happened in China, from then, late 70s to now, there are 80 million, some estimate 100 million Christians in China. Well, how did they do it? Well, they didn't do it through big worship services, through seeker-friendly, etc., through youth groups, through seminaries, through people like me who are educated. They did it because they were disciples in the making, and they produced cell groups wherever they went, everywhere they went. That's how they did it. And that gives me an incentive, because that says, I think that that's where we need to go ourselves now to find out who we are. Because one of the big things then, in terms of the betterment of our community, not working for the betterment of our community, is, I just ask you this straight. I don't mean this is somewhat inflammatory, I don't mean it, but this is my judgment. Are all the Christians we know in the churches here, are they all telling people about Jesus Christ wherever they go? That's what I'm talking about. I think they're good citizens for the most part. I think that there are people who do that, but en masse, as a whole, I don't think that's happening. I think that people might think like St. Francis in the sense of I do good things to people, but I don't actually say anything. And I'm saying to you, when Jesus says that to the disciples, the 12, we've got to decide, is that for us as well? Or is it just for the 12, and they went out and they did their job, and here we are, we just go to worship. You've seen this. I'm glad it's a small group, so I don't have to replicate it. Remember this? This is the picture of, is it an old woman or is it a young lady? And it depends on where you want to look. And because the old woman is there's the big nose and so forth. But it's the side of a young woman's face. You get that? And I was thinking about that in respect to looking at the church, because in many ways the old lady is the church. I'm defining church now as an institution. An institution that's based upon, I think, a Greek understanding of knowledge. Hebrew understanding of knowledge is activity. In other words, the Jews knew God through the saved them at the Red Sea crossing. The fact that Jesus was risen from the dead, people act on that. Whereas we've accepted a Greek form of education in which what we do is talk. We talk. We have sermons that talk. You know, the model of preaching did not come out of the New Testament. It came out, in my view, out of the 2nd and 3rd centuries of monarchical bishops who were there and they speak all the time. So therefore, there it is. You speak. Exactly in the sense what I'm doing, although it's not quite the same model because I'm just doing this one time. You do it every week. You're in there. What you do is you create a room. What do we call people now? With due respect to you who are here, I don't mean to be offensive. We call them pastors. A generation ago, when I became a Christian in New Zealand, and this is true in Scotland, people were known as ministers. But now they're all pastors. And you can meet a 25-year-old as a pastor of a church. That doesn't make any sense to me from 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1 verse 5. What does a pastor do? A pastor has a flock. A pastor is a shepherd. So in other words, then the flock is the church. So the whole notion of the main title that's used for ministers or pastors is maintenance of the church. That's it. Maintenance of the church. The church is the old lady and she needs looking after. So therefore what we do is we have this Greek form of knowledge where we have Bible classes and Bible classes and Bible classes. And this is really hard for me to say because I've discovered that so many Christians, they don't know the Bible. And so what do I want to do? Stick them in classes, and then you have me. You have the pastors, and you have me. I'm a teacher. You have me doing the teaching. That's the latter two categories in Ephesians 4 when it lists what the church is to be and what it's to be doing to equip the saints. So we equip the saints, we pastors and teachers, and we focus on the maintenance of the church. And with due respect, and I've been a minister for 18 years, I spend 25 to 30 hours a week doing what? Being by myself, preparing classes, preparing this, that, and the other, doing this. Am I actually in a situation where I'm telling other people about Jesus Christ? It's on my heart, and I'm telling the congregation that not necessarily. In fact, I meet with a group in here at noon on Friday, and our whole purpose is to tell our group, confess that what we've told about people, about Jesus Christ to people in the week. That's it. That's all we do. And I've had ministers, pastors telling me, this is new for me because I don't have that vista. I'm not amongst people. I'm in the church. So in other words, the idea is we maintain the church. I think that that's misdirected. And I want to say that if you look in that picture, what you see is a young woman. The young woman represents a movement to me. And that's what the church is. Because forget the church in a way. We don't have to worry about the church. What we have to be concerned about is being true to who we are. I hope I can do this because I know my time is running out. I have this old cat walk. I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to make it. Excuse me. You know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for the seed. Forgive me. In the seed is an apple. In the seed is a tree. In the seed is a forest. You get that? Right, fancy analogy. Jesus sneezed, and the 12 caught it, and they became too contagious. They had the virus. And what happened then is the virus spread everywhere. They went and they told people about Jesus Christ. That was the virus. It's very easy to be inoculated against the virus by having little bits of the good news and then following with the maintenance, staying in, working for the betterment of society, rather than, you realise that this is really important. The DNA that carries the inherited characteristics of that person, individual thing, is all in the seed itself. It made me realise that the DNA of the growth of the church is in every single believer. And therefore what we have to do is to free them and help them to actually be that force, that virus within the community when they spread, because it becomes contagious. And when you see that, let's say, this is again, we've got 3 or 4 minutes left. Acts 2, they're all there and they've got everything now because Jesus is the capstone of being the Messiah. So, they're not Christians in Jerusalem, these are Jews and they found Messiah. Jesus is there and they're thinking everything is great, etc., etc. And they grew by thousands, the first part of the book of Acts. And then from some circumstances, one of them, one of the apostles, Peter, gets called to Caesarea on the coast. He goes over there and what he finds, a non-Jew, a centurion called Cornelius. And he can't really work what's going on. He has a couple of dreams or visions, whatever, that tell him something that he's not quite sure about. And then the Holy Spirit falls on Cornelius as he speaks to him, and lo and behold, Peter suddenly realizes this thing is bigger. This means that I'm a disciple on the move. And what I said at the beginning, that's what a disciple is, on the move. He's moving. And so what does he do? He goes back to Jerusalem after this, because the virus has been called by Cornelius. That's the point. He goes back to Jerusalem, and do you know what they said to him? You ate with Gentiles? That was the first thing they said in chapter 11. You ate with Gentiles? Yeah. You see, they were the church. They're there. But they couldn't handle, with all their baggage, they couldn't handle moving. Because this thing moves all the time. This discipleship, this DNA is there. It's being caught. It's a virus that goes on. And they had to jettison all that stuff. You know it. They had a big conference in Acts chapter 15. And finally, James, even though he put on a few things on it that we wouldn't really like, avoiding blood and so forth, he says, okay, God must be doing something that's bigger than Jerusalem. And I want to say to you, that's the model for us. We can't allow, if we're going to reach the 60%, what we're doing now in church will reach the 40%, people who are used to us. What about the 60%? What about the people who don't go to church, don't like our language? How are we going to reach them? We've got to go into the plaza. We've got to go into the pubs. We've got to create situations where we are with these people and we are teaching anybody that we meet who's a Christian that the DNA, the virus is in you, and do you know your story? It's so sad that you have to actually do it in the sense of, well, tell your story of how you became a Christian, or what you like before you became a Christian, then you became a Christian, and now just how your life has changed. Okay, now get rid of all the religious words and so on, learn it off the spiel, now tell me it. That's not official, but I'll go with it. I'll go with it because that's what's needed. And so, I sort of now, in conclusion, what do I come to? I come to the notion then that we're disciples on the move. The challenge then is whoever we meet then is we're trying to be aware and intentional in respect to telling people about who Jesus Christ is. And if it means that you are rejected, and I'm not saying that we do it from the standpoint of, walking out, I've been rejected, I'm therefore blessed because I've been persecuted. No, I'm not saying that at all. But you have to say that. I was once sitting in the city council with Alan Topman, and he says he was Jewish, and I had this New Testament on me, was highlighted in the Sermon on the Mount. I gave it to him. I said to him, this is a council meeting, I said, hey, see, you're Jewish, you might be interested in this statement by one of your people, Jesus. In the Sermon on the Mount, he actually says something that many scholars think is the most great indictment of humankind in ancient literature. It scared the life out of him. He says, I'm not a religious Jew, I'm a cultural Jew. Okay. I walk into grocery outlet on a Sunday morning, and I'm getting the teller's egg and my stuff, and he says, well, how'd your day go? And he says, it's my fun day today. And I thought, okay. So you know something? It's my fun day too, because this is the day that I worship God. And I stopped. That's what I'm talking about. Everywhere you go, you're aware. The challenge is going to be for people like you and those of you who are ministers and teachers, is I think what you have to do, you have to educate the disciples that the DNA is within them to create what we want, which is this community knows who Jesus Christ is through each individual Christian as they go out. There's two ways of doing it. The last thing is that the way that I'm pushing, because I'm amongst you, the church people, is that we do it through the church. But one of the problems with that is, though, is that the lag of the old lady, the baggage that's so much a part of who we are. Sometimes you'll be with Christians and talking to somebody about Christian, and when you're talking to Christians, when you're talking Christians, do you know the Lord? I once met a sailor once in New Zealand from Malta. He said to me, hey, the Apostle Paul was in a shipwreck on Malta. Is there a monastery there? And the guy looked at me and he said, Paul who? The presuppositions we have, get rid of it. We've got to learn to be a disciple in the way ourselves. And so, as a tool, so in other words, we can do it through the church if we can deal with the baggage and the lag, just like from moving, if I can put context of the church in Chico in Jerusalem and moving to Caesarea, how are we going to reach the 60%? Missional communities, yes. But real missional communities, it's not simply getting bags to give to the Catalyst or providing food that goes to the tourist shelter. It's much more involved of doing that along with a message from about Jesus. For example, the women are doing this Catalyst thing, and I said, okay, I'll buy little cartoons for the kids, so when we give them shoes, there'll be a cartoon about Jesus Christ in there. It's simple, I know, and I want to do much more than that, but the point is, well, okay, what can you do? We have a meeting here, right in this room, at noon on Friday, and as I said, we're recovering disciples. In other words, the job is, who talked about Jesus Christ this week? We get 20 or 30 stories about that. And all it is to keep us focused, because it's so easy, as I've said, to go away and just be Christians working for the betterment of society, as opposed to, here it is, we're disciples on the way. We're always moving. We're prepared to take risks. I'm prepared now with Larry Hobbs, we go into pubs. We sit there in pubs. Out of our environment to some degree, although Larry, well, I shouldn't tell you this, but he knows a lot about microbrewery. In the plaza, I'm meeting with a cell group in the plaza, homeless people, violent people. In Depot Park, same thing. And it's got to occur through the artist groups, through the music groups, through the political groups in Chico. And it occurs not through us orchestrating things in a sense of a church-wide thing, but the DNA that's in every single believer has got to be released. I can see he's dying to get up here and get rid of me. And I'm finished. Thank you for listening.
So, God is at work stirring the hearts of people. And more people are sharing the gospel now than there were 6 months ago. Because I believe that DNA is coming alive in us. We're recognizing it. I talk to pastors, leaders, and I also witness to people on the streets. And I prayed with people and in these last season. And we're seeing it's not easy. I mean, the challenges are so large when you see the brokenness. But we have to not be put off by it, because that next wave of people may be as shocking to us as the Gentiles were to the Jewish believers. But let's open our hearts and carry the message. The love of Christ compels us. So let's be compelled. But I know pastors are saying, I just heard a pastor today, as a matter of fact, imploring his congregation to speak the message of Jesus Christ, the gospel to people.
Yes, Lord.
So there's others that are doing it. So let's actually start doing it. Yes?
You know, I'd like to have this group honor Bill for the message that God gave him and for being faithful to deliver it. Because Bill, I believe you carry an earned authority for this message.
You do.
Having invested in this And I know that it's been the Lord, but I also know that it's been out of your obedience. And so we say thank you.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel completely totally handled, but I just want to say, because I have my bad days on this, I think to myself sometimes when I'm doing this, like last Friday, 4 people turned up for our meeting, 4 people, and I just went, well, here they are. In other words, the point is, God's right, what he's saying is true, and we just feed off this notion that we're encouraging all Christians to tell everybody about Jesus Christ. Everywhere we go. That's what got me about the Bethel thing that I wrote in the Chief Reader's Review. I was offended. Oh, no disrespect to you, Craig, to YWAM. I thought, what? This is happening outside of Chico. What about us in Chico? What are we doing in respect to it? With due respect, we don't want to be following your footsteps, you YWAM and Bethel. We want to be leading disciples on the way ourselves, which is what you want anyway.
I believe that stirring from that event is part of, in fact, probably the most significant thing that came from that effort.
Yes,
That there was the seed that you speak of in the apple
Yeah.
that got released into this city because of what they did.
Yes.
You are now doing what you do.
For me, it was a thing along the way.
Yeah.
And then just talking to people
Yeah.
and just seeing, I was with Ron Zimmer at his church, and he's telling me he's got so many people who are coming that he's finding it hard to say with all the people who are there. I thought, that's a fantastic thing. The kind of things you're talking about.
It's awesome. And so we are, the key, I think, in what's happening here is Bill is saying, good works, yeah, not enough.
Right.
The gospel, good works don't change people. The gospel is the power of God's salvation. And we need to speak the gospel.
30 seconds on that. I wish I could say that everybody was doing good work to betterment of the community, but in churches, they're not. I don't think they are. I think people are locked in this mode. Go to church Sunday, okay, what do we do in the week? We work at night, oh, it's hot, tired, we go to bed, we get up. Saturday, sort of honeydew thing, on Saturday, and then Sunday we're back at church. That's it. In other words, maybe some of these groups are doing for the betterment of the community, but I don't want to be judgmental, but I don't think anything's happening. But it can, because the DNA is in every single one of them. Us.
Come here. Stay right
You
here.
kept me up here, I would have said that.
I know you will. I know you will. It's my fault. I accept that responsibility. I want us to gather around right now. Just get up from your seats. Come around. Let's pray. Come on up. Let's pray for.
I don't want you to pray for me, because I just,
Yeah.
I want to pray for what we're talking about.
Yes. Okay. Now, so what has to happen in all of us is allow the Lord to minister to your heart just according to what he wants to say. So, Father, wherever this message has brought offense to me, I surrender to you, because I want to proclaim the gospel more. I want to proclaim it with boldness. In Jesus' name. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. You just reach out a hand, Bill, and let's just bless what's stirring in his heart. Now, this doesn't mean Bill's perfect. It doesn't mean he's done everything just right. It doesn't mean he has all the answers. But we see God at work, and we want to bless him. In Jesus' name. So let's just lift our voices in concert now. In concert, which means all the voices can be heard at once. This praise. had said, I don't feel called to reproducing. I don't feel called to that. There would be a lot less people around then. But because God's put that in most of us and allowed us that privilege, we see increase. So let's just be those people that carry the DNA and begin to work it out.
It takes what you said from him.
Yeah.
That's a big component.
Yes.
Of going out, what happened to those disciples, it wasn't just that they took, the Holy Spirit was
Yeah.
working. God had intentions at that time, a plan at that time. It's not that they just decided, well, we'll go out and talk. No, the Holy Spirit was doing it. That's what we need.
And I believe, I do believe that. And I